Maybe you found it already, that craving within, that hunger that nothing in the material world will satiate. Maybe you have noticed that consumption never cures it, and you're hungry for something that you don't even know why or what. Today's episode will illuminate the source of that deep hunger. Perdita Finn is joining us. She has been on the show before with The Way of the Rose, with her partner, Clark Strand. And today we're talking with Perdita about her latest book, Mothers of Magic. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, and we gather around the campfire like our ancestors before us, and we sing our songs and tell our stories of what it means to be human on this blue dot floating around in a sea of stars. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and I love having these conversations week after week, and I really feel just so delighted, horrified, and delighted at the same time at everything I'm seeing unfold in the collective. And I'm really doing my best to take it all in stride, as I'm sure everybody listening is. And this broadcast, my intention is to align us all to a soul level understanding of what is happening that has been going on and that is now dismantling, and that we're moving into a whole new age. And this age is going to really incorporate our soul wisdom, which is such a blessing after having it sort of denied entrance for a few thousand years. And so we're really, really excited to be on the show today. And I feel a tug in my heart. I just listened from front to back nearly the entire book that Perdita Finn, yes, Perdita Finn is with us today. And this book is actually called Mothers of Magic. And we're going to talk about this today because we are drawing at a time when it's imperative that we draw on our ancestral mothers for help, especially if our embodied mothers are still in line using their voting power to dismantle voting powers for generations to come of girls and women, especially if they're deluded and we're throwing up our hands like, what the heck is going on? Why are you not supporting women, your granddaughters, your daughters? What's happening here? And so if you're in that moment of like, gosh, how do we get our arms around this thing and right this Titanic before it plunders every last resource in Mother Earth and destroys every last plant and animal that's struggling to survive on the planet right now? We're at the wake-up call moment. We have got to take back the magic, which is another of Perdita's books. And so I'm really, really just so thrilled, Perdita, to have you here with us. And thank you for being here and for writing these beautiful sacred texts.
Carrie, thank you for opening this incredible space as you always do and opening your incredible heart. I feel so nourished when I talk with you. It feels like a real gift to be able to be here today.
It's just so beautiful. And for those of you who haven't seen my previous interview, it was with Perdita and her husband, Clark Strand, talking about the Rosary and the Fellowship of the Rose. And so The Way of the Rose, the radical path of the divine feminine hidden in the Rosary. We already had an interview about that. I will post the link below in the show notes so that you guys can go access that in case you can't find it. But you can just search on it in Soul Nectar Show channel anywhere that you're finding it. But in addition to all of this extensive training that Perdita has done with masters and priests and rabbis and shamans and healers and apprenticed with a psychic, Susan Saxman, but she's been teaching for a long time, writing books for a long time, beautiful, beautiful texts, working with the ancestors. And this book, Mothers of Magic, is really about learning how to draw on those ancestral mothers for help and healing and asking, like, what does that mean to be a mother? What does it even mean to be alive on the planet at this time? And what's our way forward? How do we take back the magic? So I'm so grateful that you're here to discuss this profound topic with us. And your book is like 9 chapters. So like 1 chapter for each month of the birth cycle, and what a potent magic that is. I don't even know where you want to start, because it's incredible. I know where I'm going to start. I'm going to start at the beginning. Your first chapter in this book, it made me cry. And you knew it was going to make us cry. I mean, it was so amazing how, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I do. I have to say, the invitation is to be in touch with our mother's body and accept it just the way it is.
I realize that when you start to talk to women or anyone about their mothers, we all immediately plunge into this psychologized narrative of disappointments, frustrations, failures, complexity, nuance, the mushmagosh of our relationship. But when you ask people about their mother's body, something else happens. And suddenly it's her hands and her hair, the feel of her skin, her belly, the way she walked. It's our first home, that body. That body is where we begin this life, like listening to that heart, listening to those blood vessels go around us, to feeling the contractions of her muscles, And even more powerful than that was the discovery, I'm sure some people may have heard of this, when a woman's body is formed inside her mother, forming inside her body are also the eggs that will become her daughter. So we also exist, literally exist, inside of our grandmother's bodies and our mother's bodies simultaneously.
Yeah, it's really profound. In the work that I do, I work shamanically. I take shamanic journeys with people, and we do rebirthing sequences all the way back to the grandmother's womb, because that's where it started.
Yeah, I mean, and as you know from reading the book, I had a grandmother who I was told to fear as a child because she was depressed, seriously depressed, in and out of mental hospitals, depressed. And when I was 6 years old, she had a stroke that paralyzed her in half her body. So she was a very disabled, frail, and vilified figure for me as a child, of such sorrow and disappointment. And, my mother was terrified of anyone being depressed. She'd ask you if you were depressed, if you started to cry. And it wasn't an invitation, it was an accusation. It was like something to be guarded against. So to reclaim my grandmother's body and to reclaim the fullness of my grandmother's story was my rebirth.
Yeah, it's amazing. You found journals. You actually retraced her steps to understand how she became the way that she became and what caused her to be the person that she was later in life. It was like all these disappointments. It was amazing, her journey.
It was. And, I was gifted. After my mother died, I discovered among my mother's things a giant steamer trunk. First, I began to look through, it was filled with sort of old letters and cards and things and photograph albums. And then I began to discover these journals. And I discovered that my grandmother, who I was never told had any talent, any interest, anything other than being a burden to everyone, had kept a daily journal her entire life. And I sat down and I read that journal and I met that woman.
It's powerful that you had access to that, because so many women in these previous generations, before my mom's generation, did not talk publicly about what was happening in their private lives.
Absolutely. And we don't even know sometimes. And yet I do think we can begin to tap in ancestrally or use constellation therapy. There are ways to access, with the help of those on the other side, this lost information. I don't think it was a mere coincidence I found those journals. I think they came as a great gift from the other side to me.
And it's like, my mom also had a journal from the stepmother of my grandfather, her father, his stepmother, because his mother had died when he was just 18 months old.
Oh, no.
And she had been sick the whole time he was alive. And then here was this very kind woman who became his stepmother. And then she had 5 kids. And on that 5th kid, she went a bit insane. In the same time that her 5th kid was being born, her beloved friend and companion, her brother, he died. surprisingly, in a terrible fire. And so she ended up in the mental hospital for a little bit. And she had journals where she was just journaling the weather, basically like the weather today is
like
like
my
this.
grandmother.
The weather today is like that. And I was thinking, wow, I wonder what the weather code was, because I feel like women had to invent codes in order to express
For my
themselves.
grandmother, the weather was her oracle deck. It was her consultation with the oracle every day. And I began to have the feeling as I read year after year and day after day, like, oh, you're telling me your emotional state. She didn't talk about her feelings, but she would, sudden burst of sunshine, the sky is sparkling blue, while, and then gray, cloudless, late rain. You know what I mean? Like after my mother was born, you felt it. She felt the weather as a mirror. And she was a gardener, so she was really in touch with what the weather meant, with what she could grow and what she could do. And I think the thing is, she was also a writer. That was the thing I wasn't told, of course. Your grandmother was a writer. Did she write a book? No. Did she have success? No. Was she allowed to go to school? No. Did she complete something more than sixth grade? No. You know what I mean? Like, she was working with what she had.
And it's just so powerful that in our generation, we got to get out there and publish books. We got to get out and speak. We have this whole internet thing that allows us to have our own podcasts and our own voices and express things, and social media and be witnessed in all these people, thousands and thousands of people. And I got to say, like, when I started doing this social media stuff, my mom was like, you can't talk about that. I was like, oh, I can.
Carrie, it's so interesting that you bring it up, because I've had the same exact experience with social media. As what I have found, my daughter talks about this too, is it's empowered women's voices and it's helped women find each other. And it's empowered women authors, women podcasters, women thinkers. Me Too doesn't happen until you get the rise of social media. So you can vilify social media, you can make fun of it, and certainly there are problems with the television, with radio, with the telephone, whatever. But it has, for me as an author personally, it's allowed me to be an author. Because otherwise, before that, it was just a boys' club.
Yeah. And the fact that the internet now has sites like Amazon, and Amazon is not perfect. It has some terrible things that it does. But it also has enabled people to publish their own books, self-publish. And so you didn't
There's so many women. Colleen Hoover, she self-publishes her memoir about her novel about domestic abuse. And the next thing you know, she's a bestseller. But I know this woman, I recently discovered her on Instagram. She couldn't get a publisher. She wrote this book about a psychic and this spiritualist revival in the Hudson Valley. I said, that sounds like my cup of tea. I ordered the book. I read a lot, Carrie. It was superb. It was so beautifully written. It was so fantastic. And I was like, her name is Haddis Knox. The book is called The Dove in an Iron Cauldron. And I'm just saying, like, we women can put each other on the map this way. We can bypass the usual routes if we want to.
Yeah. And I think that's powerful to recognize that, because what I realized today, as you know, I was standing with my Nope shirt on in Texas, in the line, fully myself, unapologetic. And I really felt the field of control. And this is the thing that I think disturbs me the most, is that the people in line were largely grandmothers. And they're keeping this field of disempowerment active by their vote. And I'm not even sure that they're cognizant that that's what they're actually doing.
I think
there's a big disillusionment happening, that they're being used because they have never broken free to the realms of discernment. And I'm talking here about women who run with the wolves, right? So anybody who's read that book, when you run with the wolves, you realize a lot of things. First of all, you're outcast because now you're not part of this field that's trying to suppress and dampen down feminine power.
I think for a lot of these women, and I'm going to use myself as an example, we come by our fear with good reason. And in my book, I document during patriarchy and, the 8 to 10,000 years of patriarchy, women have been pretty traumatized. A lot of bad stuff has gone down, and women have been taught to be frightened. There were periods during the European witch craze where not a single woman was left alive in certain villages. Now, you kill every woman in a village, and for a 100-mile radius, every other woman remembers. And for 7 generations, women remember. And you take slavery and the massacre of indigenous people in this country, and you're committing atrocities against indigenous women and Black women in this country, and you better believe women are being frightened, right? That could be me. And so I think there is this tremendous fear that they don't even know they have. And the feeling is, what's going to make me safe? Sticking close to the big man, the guys. And I know that for me, my mother, I was mad at when I was younger and in my 20s. How come this? How come that? I didn't really get it. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know what it was like to be a goddess like my mother was and have to be a housewife in the 1960s in a New England village. You know what I mean?
Your mom pretty much broke all the traditions. She just stomped on them, you know. She was stomping grapes, you know, for wine. Like
it was, but it wasn't easy. And it made me, as her daughter, scared for her. And she also was an angry, upset, frustrated. My father left her. She felt abandoned. And I identified with the boys. I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted power. I wanted success. I wanted to be safe. I went off and got involved in Zen Buddhism, you know, the boys club. Oh, you know, one boy after another. And maybe that'll make me have some power if I hang out with the boys. And what it does is it silences you, of course, and it takes your power away. For me, my wake-up call was I had a baby, and I was in the Zendo. I was 30 years old, and I was a strong meditator. You know, I could sit there doing meditating, and I had my baby at my breast. I could snip lips, you know, sneak him out of the smuggly out of my boob. And afterwards, I got yelled at for doing that and was told, you know, the baby made too many cooing noises, and it upset people's meditation. And I thought, wait a minute. A baby cooing is disrupting this whole event? Something's going wrong here. You know, would the birds disrupt you? Would the wind disrupt you? What are we doing here? And I walked out. That was it.
Yeah, it's fragile. And it's not how indigenous cultures are.
No.
Indigenous cultures, they have their children right in the ceremony, right there in life, in the middle of their sacred work. Children.
Because they recognize children as their elders come back. They recognize children as precious. They don't stick their babies in bassinets with intercoms, you know, on the other side of the McMansion, you know, and cry it out and learn not to cry, you know, which is what we do.
I actually, when I had my sons, I breastfed each of them for like 2 years. So I was very into breastfeeding. I did a whole artwork series on breastfeeding mothers. I've always been putting shit in people's faces, Perdita. I just cannot help myself.
Well, Carrie, that's why I love you so much. Here's the thing. My daughter I nursed for 1.5 years. My son I nursed for 4 years. My husband used to say, I'm not sure he's going to be able to go to college. Do you think he's going to be able to go to college?
But like, think about this. They published the pictures of my nursing series. I got people to pose for me with their kids. They published them in the newspaper. This is in California, in San Jose. They published them. Aww. They put the pictures of these nursing moms.
You know what? People don't often know that the most popular image of the Virgin Mary in the Middle Ages was something called Maria Lactans, Maria Nursing. And she would be topless, expressing milk, either into the mouth of the baby Jesus or into everybody's mouths. She was, you know what I mean? Like, here she goes. And that was the most popular devotional image in the Middle Ages. Not Mary with like veils over her, but Mary topless.
I learned a lot about the overall culture. And this was in California, which is supposed to be open-minded. This is back in the day, so I just got to place it because California has also made a lot of changes. This is like Silicon Valley, San Jose area, right around the turn into the 2000s. So like 1999, 2000, 2001, 2, and 3. So just to place it, because I know it changes all the time. But yeah, like they wouldn't tell me I couldn't nurse my baby at the table at the restaurant, but they kind of would have preferred it. I'd gone into the dirty bathroom to do it. And there was no way I was going to do that to my kid. No, we're going to sit at the table. And if he's hungry, he's going to eat, and I'm going to eat, and he's going to eat, and we're all going to eat. And I had the, you know, the discreet covering thing. So the
whole thing. I know I've got the whole discreet covering thing. I mean, but, you know, one of the great moments of my life, I'll tell you about this. My husband is in the other room, will hear this and he'll laugh. So his father was this Southern prep school headmaster, you know, little bow ties, little outfits, little suits, very, you know.
Proper, prim and
proper with a capital P. Anyway, when I gave birth to my son, I just finished a 10-hour labor. I birthed a 10-pound baby naturally. And I was naked and nursing And they wheeled me out of the delivery room into my room that I would have. And there with my father-in-law sitting there, he was the first person waiting for, to his credit, he was there. He wanted to meet the grandbaby. And there I am, naked and spewing milk, nursing this 10-pound baby. And I'm too tired. I can't do anything. I just can't move. He's going to have to deal with this.
Yeah, he's going to have to deal with it. I think that's the message. He is going to have to deal with it.
Exactly.
I think we've come around to this place now in thousands of years of exploration of this whole thing. And he's just going to have to deal with it. I mean, I love that you said that.
Here's the other thing. I think not only is he going to have to deal with it, he too is going to be fed by it. He too is going to get the nourishment he hasn't gotten. And recently, there's so much awful stuff going on in the world right now. We're just vibrating with it, right? Pick your atrocity. But my current atrocity is this website that was just exposed by CNN.
Yes.
Motherless, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that it was called motherless. Who's motherless? The victims or the perpetrators? Because nobody's motherless, but everybody feels motherless. And people who are motherless feel violent, feel upset. I look at some of these monsters in power and I go, you don't know how to fill the ache in you. You have no idea, no amount of money, no amount of billions, no amount of wives, no amount of power is going to fill that motherless ache at the bottom of your soul.
It's true. Yeah, and there's so many layers to this thing that when we start to get in, we pull a thread. And I think that's because it's a tapestry, right? It's a weaving. And so we start to pull a thread on the weaving and we go, oh, that's why that's the way that is. And it's kind of like the entanglement of it all is at once necessary for life to sustain itself, because beyond the veil, I realized at some point, I think it was when I was in the hospital with pulmonary embolism, and the guy came in to do my heart scan, and you can see it's like a heart ultrasound. I don't know what you call it, but he got to this one point and I saw the valves moving, and maybe it was the medication I was on, but I was like, oh my gosh, my heart has a being inside of it that's beating a drum and singing me alive. That's amazing.
Carrie, that's so beautiful.
I mean, I was watching it sing. It was like singing me alive.
Well, that same heart is the heart that sang to your children in the womb, that we've all been sung to by that heart. We could begin to hear that song again. I feel like the world would be a different place, right? Hear it in our own hearts and hear in other people's.
I would love for men to be less intimidated by the power that runs through a mother's body. I would like them to be inspired by it, to be desiring of it, to want to nestle up close to it, to want to be guided by that wisdom.
One of the things I talk about in my book, in Mothers of Magic, is that, if we go back to our Paleolithic ancestors before patriarchy, before civilization, civilization is a recent experiment, as you said, that's not going very well. But,
Yeah, it's very poorly going. It's going poorly.
Going very poorly indeed. But if we go back, we find that the devotional objects that people made, actually I have one right here, they made devotional objects were the naked bodies of their grandmother. It's so hard for us to conceive of a people who would find holding, and all of them are made of a size to be held. This is an exact replica of one of them, of the naked body of their grandmother being a comfort object. We don't even want to think about the naked body of our grandmother, right? We don't want to think about that as where we come from and what's held us. And yet for those people who lived pretty sustainably on the earth for a long time, that kept them in check.
If you look at that statue, hold it back up. She's not shaped like a 10-year-old girl.
Oh, they make girls look like 10-year-old boys. And when I say the naked body of a grandmother, I mean, these are women who have nursed 20 different kids, had lots of babies, settled in comfortably in their lives, And these are the objects of devotion, not some airbrush. I often say that, we say that, it's terrible to put women in the hijab and to make them veil them and in Afghanistan the way we do. But don't we do the same to women by making them put on Botox and fillers and plastic surgery and this and that? And why can't we just be the animals we are?
I mean, I notice it in myself. For anybody listening, I mean, how well my mentors always gave me this assignment: stand in front of the mirror naked and just be with your body and love yourself, right? And notice the judgments that come up and bring healing to it. And I do that. And I still have judgments. I've been walking this path for 14 years, this part.
I'm 64 years old, Carrie. I have to say, on the one hand, I've never enjoyed myself more. I feel more like remember that feeling when you're like 8 years old and you like get a new pair of sneakers and you're just running around the house and you're just a happy kid?
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting there. I'm trying to get back to that 8-year-old kid in her new pair of sneakers who's just kind of happy.
Yeah. And it's that freedom, right? The freedom of not being self-obsessed.
Right. But also liking yourself. You know what I mean? Happy with a new outfit or a new you know what I mean? Not self-denying either, but it's so hard for us. I mean, look at the assault. I have both a daughter and a son, and what my son received from the culture, what my daughter received from the culture, are very different indeed.
Yeah, and even different sons. I have 2 sons and they came out very differently, right? I also had a divorce, which also factors into this whole thing, because I changed. I changed unconsciously when I met him. I did all the patriarchal female things to like keep the man. And then I couldn't do it anymore because it was too false and I had to stop and I had to let go, and he could not keep up with who I actually was. So in a way, I did deceive him. In a way, I pretended to be somebody I wasn't for a long time.
We're taught by the entire culture to do that. And it feels very dangerous to be who we are. And by the way, that's not just for women. That's for men too. I think the entire culture keeps us from that song of our hearts that you heard. I think each of us has a song in our heart. And if we could really listen to it and really become who we really are and harmonize with that song, it would be a lot better.
That is the opportunity of these times. And I know it looks really awful out there. And I'm just reminded of birth, right? Like when you're birthing, you scream, you moan, there's blood and mucus and all kinds of stuff flying everywhere.
And everything. No one tells you about the poop.
This is everywhere, right? And so it is messy. And humanity is the opportunity to wake up now. And some people are like, no, I don't, want to. But there's this huge opportunity for us to do exactly what you said, is like really discover who we actually each are outside of this patriarchal construction of false identities and roles and systems and beliefs. And it's scary, right? Because it touches everything. It touches religion. It touches government. It touches family. It touches identity. It touches everything. So it is terrifying. If you don't have a center, if you don't know who you are in your center, it can be terrifying looking at everything that's falling apart.
It is. And I think things are going to continue to fall apart. And it's part of the healing process. I'll never forget, my daughter got a compound fracture once in her foot. When the bone comes up through and breaks in the skin. And she's allergic to all antibiotics, and it got infected. And so they had to put her in the hospital, and a wound specialist had to come in every night. And he had to scrape out all of the necrotic tissue around the broken bone.
You wrote about that in The Way of the Rose. Ugh.
I had to hold her hand. And eventually it dried from the bottom up. She doesn't have a scar. You know what I mean? Like, he did beautiful wound healing on her. He said it was like Civil War work he was doing. But I've often thought about it because we think in the modern era that healing is I take a pill and then I'm better. And sometimes the healing is we got to scrape out all the rotten tissue and we got to let things heal from the bottom up really slowly. And that's not going to be fun. But the person who's sitting and holding our hands during that process, because we're not alone, are all our ancestral mothers who've seen it all. That's what I summon. I summon them to me. My grandmothers, my great-grandmothers, and also I summon in all those grandmothers from before patriarchy, the wild ones who were never tamed. I started calling them in when I was writing Mothers of Magic, and they started showing up. It was wild.
In the moment that you start putting your focus there, like my mom writing the ancestral book, right? Going through and writing the stories out that she remembers hearing when she was doing that genealogy years ago when everybody was still alive. And now she's writing it into an actual book. I can feel their presence. They're there. They're with us. They show up when they hear their name spoken. And there's so much healing to be done there too. Because why? Because for me anyway, I'm looking at the world's structures and definitely in the United States. And I'm looking at how we can dismantle these unfair systems, these unequitable systems, and finally just like love each other and stop putting some people over others because of arbitrary things like skin color. And I know that my ancestors, my mom's doing this research, she's doing all this work on it, that we were in Tennessee. We were right in the heart. We were Confederates. They were enlisting. They were, Tennessee and these various, in Louisiana. And I'm like, that was us. That was my ancestry. And so a lot of white people are having a hard time connecting with their ancestors. So talk about that, because it's hard for people right now.
So civilization, and we're going back to 8,000 years ago, has been a shit show from the beginning. It invents violence. There's no evidence of human violence before human civilization. None. But before civilization, there was no evidence of war, violence, rape, misogyny. And then we start living in these cities. And that we've got police forces and the military, and we've got slavery, and we've got religion, and we've got priests, and we've got pyramids, and we've got pyramid schemes, and we've got the 1% living in their palaces, and we got 80% of everybody else working in the fields, not having a good time. And then we got 10% as being the police, right? I mean, that's been the structure from the get-go. And one of the things that's really interesting is in the beginning of civilization, and civilization crops up all over the world, in the Americas, China, Africa, everywhere. And it's always the same story. It arises, violence begins. But in the beginning, those 80% people, they would run away. They hated it. Like, get me out of here. The civilizations, the Cahokia civilizations on the Mississippi River, they fell apart. Everybody ran away. Everybody said, this is a bad idea. Whatever we're doing here, this doesn't work. We're out of here. And, eventually that's why, the 1% develops more and more polices, because they've got to keep the workers with their nose to the grindstone. The people have never really wanted this. And suddenly we find ourselves trapped in these systems of violence, with violence everywhere we look. Our prison system, our school system, our healthcare system, everywhere we look, we see inequity and violence. And certainly what we're doing to the natural world is just sickening. Everything feels wrong.
It's all backwards.
So one of the ways I've been conceptualizing, like, what do we do, is I think we have to give ourselves more time to work with. Please go out and do what you can for your neighbor today. Vote. You know what I mean? Do what you can for your neighbors today. But let's start to imagine what the world might look like 108 lifetimes from now. I don't quite know how we're going to get there, but I'm going to be asking my ancestral grandmothers to get us there. Like, what would it look like if our cities got covered in vines and we didn't have cars anymore? What would it look like if someone figured out how to shut down all the nuclear power plants and dismantle all the nuclear weapons and figure out how to dispose of the radioactivity neatly? What would it look like if we could live together communally again? In my book, one of the things I wanted to do is to look at the mother before civilization, the atrocities within, but then let's start to play and imagine a world. Let's imagine a better world together. And again, tomorrow I'm voting for universal health care. I'm fighting for it now. I'm fighting to end solitary confinement now. But in 4,900 lifetimes from now, I don't want there to be prisons. 100 lifetimes from now, I don't want people to need health insurance. I want everybody to be caring for each other, right?
Yeah,
So
and there's
both.
I think it has to do with what they talk about in the Gene Keys as the next version of humanity, right? Which is a humanity that understands itself as human, as divine, as both. It's a soul-embodied human.
That's it. We can't forget our souls anymore. And we've been trying to forget our soul story. I think we're addicted to civilization. Like we can't.
It's convenient.
It feels so convenient. A friend of mine says the prayer of civilization is let me keep on driving to Walmart to buy more stuff I don't need. You know what I mean?
And yet the shamans that taught my teacher, Don Manuel Kisti, he said he liked to work with the shamans that didn't need the spaceships to get here.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes. I want to be here. My favorite movie is Groundhog Day, with Bill Murray. You know what I love about that movie is the end when he looks and he says, he's been in this town. He's been trying to escape it his whole life, right? Like, how do I get out of this wretched town? And he's been stuck there lifetime after lifetime. And at the end, he says, let's live here. And I think that's my prayer for people is, how about we live on this planet? How about we know we're coming back to this planet? How about we start cleaning up our messes?
And taking care of it. And that's why I love the indigenous, because of all the different versions, the indigenous never forgot that they were stewards of this planet. Okay. Out of all the different tribes, out of all the different peoples, they remembered that they were here as stewards of this planet. I think that's pretty remarkable. And this is why I listen to Don Manuel, that's why I call him in every day, because that's amazing. Of all the things, what you're here is to take care of this planet and to take care of it. The
planet is here to take care of us.
7 generations in the future. But when we make choices, Mother Earth can handle a lot of our stuff, obviously, because she has. But I mean, there's a limit. There is a tolerance to how much we can really push the envelope. And I think we've got there now. So we need to pull back, right? It's time for us to be more mature about how we walk on the earth.
Sometimes I feel like the earth has gone through contractions and expansions with nature. Nature is boundlessly creative. Okay, I'll draw another world. Dinosaurs are done. I guess that's over. That was interesting. How about we take these little rodent creatures and turn them into something? That's us, right? That 65 million years ago, mammals start kind of emerging from underneath the bushes. But I'm not sure what comes next. 75,000 years ago, there was a super eruption on the planet. And Mount Toba erupted in Indonesia and big, caldera. And probably humanity was reduced to about 5,000 people in the Horn of Africa. We are all descended from those 5,000 people. The various numbers. Some people say it was as low as 1,000. Some people say it was closer to 10,000. But it was a small group of people who were left. And all the people on the planet come from that group of people. And there are these contractions and expansions that occur. And I do think that the planet is maybe in a moment of extreme contraction. Like the insects, I live in the mountains of New York, and there are so many fewer insects this year. There are so many fewer butterflies. The climate change is happening so fast, nature can't adapt fast enough. I mean, it will. Ultimately, the canvas will get wiped clean and something else will emerge. But that's going to be a rocky road. So we better know how to be nice to each other, because that's going to be rocky, I think.
Yeah, and I have heard other people say that as well. And it's not about creating fear or anything like that. It's about being realistic. And I was talking about this years ago, and I had people say, oh, no, you're going to talk about those terrible things. I'm not manifesting that. And I'm not creating that. And I'm like, okay, yes, there's manifestation on a personal level. And definitely it's important to have a good mental attitude and envision what you would like. The shamans teach us that, right? But there's also seeing what's there and contending with it, making choices, being realistic about what nature is showing us, listening to the signs, and then doing the best we can with it, right? I mean, sometimes we can't avoid the car crash, but we can ameliorate it. And maybe I've seen the shamans say, well, that's too much. And so they'll come back and select a different potential. And then the
you went through an ordeal with your knee and your embolism. And yet in the middle of that, what must have been a terrifying experience, you also heard your heart sing.
I did. I was like, oh, look at this.
I don't know if you know, in 2025, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks with a mysterious illness. I couldn't get my fevers to come down. And one night the fevers were so bad, and whether I shut my eyes or opened my eyes, all I could see was genocide. It was like all I could see were the human genocides around the world, the ditches filled with bodies, it's just terrible. Atrocities. I couldn't escape it. I would say it was like a hallucinatory fevered state, but I knew something intense and spiritual was going on. I just said, Mama, help, take me somewhere to help me. And I have this mountain I walk up behind my house, and I heard the mountain say to me, Carrie, come into my body. And I went inside the mountain where the bears were hibernating and the salamanders were hibernating. And I could feel like the crystals and the stones. I mean, I'm in a hospital bed. And I thought, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And I think we have to know how to act right. It doesn't mean because we're on a spiritual path that life doesn't have hard, scary twists and turns, but we have resources for those moments, right?
Yeah, and we learn to be resourceful and centered. And that's why intuition is so important for this time on the planet and waking it back up and talking to your ancestors, having an ancestral altar. I mean, these are things that are very helpful. And
I figure my ancestors have done climate change. About a month ago when this Iran craziness broke out, and it's scary because I don't feel like they're grown-ups in charge.
Well, we know there's not grown-ups in charge.
Right.
And it might look 70, but they're actually more like 3. So.
And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I found myself praying to all the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Those people burned into ash so that all was left was a shadow on the pavement. I said, please, please, please keep us from ever, ever using these weapons again. I mean, I pray to them, please help us dismantle these weapons. Please. And so going back to something you said about, I look and I go, oh my gosh, I find I've got slave-owning ancestors. Oh, I've got these horrible ancestors.
Yeah.
What do I do with them? What do I do with them? I wonder how they felt when they died. That slave-owning ancestor who dies and realizes that the person he has enslaved have been his kin and his children. How does the person who has hurt another person, how does the military general feel when he dies and he realizes all the bombs he's dropped on his own mothers and children? A psychic friend of mine, she said that the first thing a lot of people say when they die is, oh shit, I didn't realize. Well, I want to realize while I'm alive.
Yeah.
I want to see with the eyes of the dead while I'm alive. And so who do we call on to protect us from civil war and violence? Those very ancestors who were involved in civil war and violence, because they know how bad it can be. Who do we call on to help us dismantle the wage slavery that exists in this country right now and bring back the unions? But those people who were the union busters, that's who I call on. When I call on the dead, I do 2 things. One, I call on the people who are, of course, champions and experts in life. So like my dad, he was a doctor. He was a good doctor. Got a medical problem, go dad. My father was also the stingiest person in the whole world, and he cut me out of his will.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks. So I call on him for financial help. And guess what? He's always generous from the other side. So much so, it's become a joke in the family. So success can make you good at really something from the other side, but so can failure. So our ancestors who are colonialists are the very people to help us dismantle capitalism.
Yeah, I've been calling on I'm a daughter of the American Revolution. So I've been calling on my ancestors that founded this country and asking for their help, because everything that they feared, everything they wrote that Constitution about, everything they feared would happen is now happening, So it's like, wow, that's why they wrote all those provisions in there so that it wouldn't happen like this. And I
tried to join the Daughters of the American Revolution. I found out my mother had an ancestor who'd been a captain and hosted George Washington. He was a captain in the American. I said, why has nobody ever gotten us in the DR? Because I wanted to get my daughter a college scholarship. So I wrote them, and I got these lovely letters back, and all these women were writing me, and it seemed like, and I had all of the documentation, and I sent them the documentation. I said, oh, this looks lovely. This is all perfect. Blah, blah, blah. We'll have to have tea. We'll invite you to the meeting. And I thought, okay, so if you get ready to write that scholarship essay. And then I got a letter, and they said, you'll never be allowed to join the DAR. Because it turned out my ancestor played both sides. So he was a runner, boat runner for the Revolutionary Army, the Continental Army, but he also signed a loyalty oath to the king just in case.
Oops. Yeah.
So you know what I pray to him about? He said, well, what's the big deal if I sign the loyalty oath? This is a good way to protect my family now. And they're like, you didn't have any idea that was going to keep us from all those college scholarships later on. You should have
exactly.
Your principles.
Yeah, but I mean, it was also kind of disheartening to see the actual records of my ancestors fighting in this. as Confederates, right? Because I had this idea of myself as exempt from all this kind of stuff. And I found out I wasn't exempt from it. And I was like, okay, I'm not exempt.
Okay, so no one's exempt, because if you go back 10,000 years, I don't care where in the world you stand, except for Australia probably, you go back to civilization. And you go to back to civilizations that were enslaving people.
Egypt did that too. I mean, it's terrible.
Egypt, the Middle East, so did the Incas and the Aztecs.
I remember my Egyptian lifestyle.
It happened in Africa. It happened everywhere. The problem is living with too much stuff, at living in these pyramid schemes. If we live simply on the land, like that fire you talked about in the beginning.
Gathering around the fire, sharing our stories,
that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Humbly.
That's the way we're supposed to live, right?
Yeah. And I don't think we have to get rid of technology to do that, but we have to serve us, not us serve it. And right now it's kind of us serving it. It's the greed and the hunger, what they call Wetiko, the greed.
The greed, the Wetiko, I know, the hungry ghost. The hungry ghosts are not the dead. The hungry ghosts are the living. And the big question is, how much is enough? Our ancestors knew how much was enough. It was as much as you could carry, because they walked every day. They didn't have closets. They didn't have suitcases. They didn't have storage facilities. You carried your children. You carried your fire-making tools and often some coals. You carried a little food, a few seeds, some grain, maybe some jerky. You had a few things you carried, but then you got to where you were going, and you got to where you're going to eat new food, and you picked up things and made what you needed to make and and it was actually a very beautiful way of living. You walked a lot, you sang, you probably worked about 2 hours a day.
I see people doing this down in, the jungle. I mean, that's how they live.
Exactly.
They'll just sit for hours and just kind of watch over the plants and meditate, relax. And it's not even meditation. Art. It's just living.
And making art, singing, dancing, making things, joy. Making art.
Or taking the plants and learning from the plants. It's like communicating with the plants and learning things.
This is what our ancestors did, and they can lead us back to that way of living again. I mean, I don't think we'll get there overnight.
But I think there's a lot of attachment. There's so much attachment. I think it's going to take quite a bit of time for people to calm their nervous systems back down into recalibration and coherence. It's been so violent for so long that it's going to take a long time, I think. Even with all of our beautiful shamanic tools and everything that we know, it still takes our people probably, some of them, they're like 6 years and they're finally just starting to relax in their bodies enough to
I feel like that's one of the things we're doing, and I'm trying to do, is to create these oases of faith in the desert, in the wasteland.
Yeah.
Like, can we create places where people can come just to step out of fear, back into faith and belonging? That's what my work is all about.
And we're in the hotbed, so let's not be naive about that. The United States is a hotbed of this conflict, right? So it's extremely hot here in terms of that. It's like a palpable field that people coming from that leave this place to get away from this and then go someplace else that's not like this. And then they come back and they said, it is so tense being back here. Like, it's just like, it's a palpable energetic field. So if we're sitting here in the United States, we just have to know that that's in the background, and your body is just saying, I'm scared, because it's scary.
It's scary, but then what grounds us in faith? And I think that goes back to that heart song again, which I love so much. I keep coming back to, which is that need to hear our own heart, right? And to see that song. And, I watch my son, who I have these conversations with, and, he is not only turning our whole backyard into a permaculture food garden.
So cool.
He's created a business where he's helping everybody in our community do that. He said, our whole community should be food sustainable. And that's his vision. He said, in the next 5 years, I want us to be growing and eating all our own food. And like, if everybody in our community were doing that, the fear level would go down. Because one of the things we're frightened about as animals is we're very far detached from our food, right? And his partner is very, interested in herbalism and medicine. We were also detached from medicine and healing, right? So the more we reclaim these lost ways, I think our blood pressure goes down.
Yeah, for sure. And just hearing these ancestral stories, my mom is telling about the farmers that my grandparents and great-grandparents were, and they grew up that way and raising the chickens and the eggs and the hogs and yeah. So it's not that far ago. It's really not that far ago. It's just reclaiming some connection with the land and a different life, a different way of living on the planet. I agree.
Being in conversation with those beings too, really respectful conversation.
We're going to find our way out of this, Perdita, and it's the mystery.
I do hope that the next time around I get to have you around the corner, though, because I would love to go play with you and have you closer than Texas.
I know. Texas is a bit far, and I'm not sure we're going to stay here, but
really,
we're here for now because this is where I'm wanted for anchoring light. So,
You know what? It makes it gives me some hope and joy to know you're there.
Yeah, there's a lot of other spiritual beings here as well. And we are anchoring this frequency here. And, hopefully it sorts itself out pretty soon.
I'm in New York, and you know what? It's as muddled here. It's as muddled here, believe it or not. You have an overall picture that seems like it's different, but it's on the ground. It's pretty muddled.
I am going to be in New York real soon, but I'll talk to you about that after the broadcast. But anyway, so yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and for just really encouraging us to get in touch with our ancestral mothers and you guys just have to listen to this book. I liked it on Audible because you actually read it on Audible and it's so reassuring and beautiful. So I recommend you guys, if you like Audibles, get the Audible because it's really, really, really amazing to listen to. And if not, then, get the book. So I'll put the links down below in the show notes. Is there anything else you want people to know before we wrap up this call?
No, just I hope, if you love the book and you enjoy it, reach out. I teach a lot of workshops. I have a Substack that's where I write a lot. So, come and let me know what you thought. If you read it and like it. It's wonderful to hear from people.
That's beautiful. All right, you guys, here come the kisses. You can join me if you like. We're going to give kisses, everybody. We love you. Thank you for staying till the very, 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 very end, because that's when you get these Reiki kisses. And please share this episode out with everybody that you think could benefit from this wisdom and this conversation. Here it comes. Love you guys so much. And we'll see you in all the ways we see you. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, Nectar Show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are.